We're under 2 months away, just weeks away from Trump becoming president, the inauguration. Well, today we're going to talk about a few things that's happening worldwide. How, for instance, everything is escalating, all the while we're changing leadership. Not only here, there's also foreign governments who are part of NATO, who are still trying to escalate, who are literally struggling, who are literally fixing to have a collapse in 2 major European countries, all because they're pushing the same garbage that the Democrats were pushing here. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the fact of Trump's safety. There's a new report coming from overseas that he is no longer safe because of what he's trying to do to destabilize maybe the bigger frames of government and trying to make it more decentralized. That's the word that Doge just came out and said. They want to decentralize the federal government. I think America and most of the people of the world are wanting the same thing. They want peace. They want to quit the fighting. And while the people are saying that, guess what? New reports are showing that America is activating troops and ships going to a part of the world that we're going to talk about. Also, what is this mention of 100,000 troops ready to ascend in Ukraine? Crazy. Let's talk about these stories today because they impact you. It's amazing how something that happens all across the other side of the world impacts you. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell. Give us a thumbs up. It means the world to us, and we humbly ask that you do that. Of course, it's coming up on the giveaway, which is going to be December 1st for 2 of our subscribers. But not only that, we need your support. We have lost about 5,000 subscribers this month because we're speaking truth. So please make sure you are subscribed. You have the bell notification on, and you give us a thumbs up. It does mean the world to us. Now let's jump into these stories and how important these stories are. First, let's talk about what Putin just said. Putin just came out, and I want to read this article because it's actually, you know, when we hear news, and I'm not talking about like Twitter news, I'm talking about like legacy media. We always hear that the world's always in turmoil and that everybody hates America. And the truth be told, I don't know if that's true. I believe that's what we're told, and that's what we're meant to believe, so that helps the movement of our military do things that they probably shouldn't be doing. Now, what do I mean by that? I want you to listen to this. Putin says Trump is not safe after assassination attempts, slams the fact of people mudslinging against his family. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin, while in a collective security treaties organization, that's kind of like their NATO, in a summit in Astana, Kazakhstan, spoke to reporters that made mention that U.S. President Trump is not safe. He said he believes that Trump is not safe no matter where he goes because of the 2 attempts on his life, but also the fact that he is trying to do such changing and destabilizing of this world system that his life is at risk. Now, there's a lot of truth to that. I think most of us see that here in America and the dangers that he faces. Like, for instance, I don't know, I would hope that Trump has the right people around him because his life is always at risk. I mean, you saw that his cabinet choices all had threats against their life just last week. It was like 5 to 7 of them. So when we push against the fray and when we try to do something different, guess what? Persecution will come. Now let's talk about 2 other governments before we jump into the actual stories. Germany, they're literally in utter collapse with their government. They're trying to change hands. It's been going on for about a month or 2 now. French, there's a new report that says that the French government is literally in collapse and that they're hoping Le Pen will take over, which is the other leader. What we're seeing is people are saying we're tired of the way that things are going. And they're looking at people like Trump and Malay and El Salvadorian leader and even the Netherlands guy too. They're wanting to see change. And what change makes is you stick to your part of the world, you try to build up your own economies, and then we will shoot for peace. I mean, that's kind of what everybody wants instead of these wars. Now, as these countries are failing, literally their governments are being toppled because people are wanting something different. As Trump wins in a landslide, NATO has 2 reports. NATO came out and stated that Ukraine has no negotiation abilities because they've lost so much territory and actually are losing the war. I mean, that's really what he was saying. He was like, look, Ukraine is not in a place to actually negotiate. So what happens is NATO tries to step in. There's a new report. Now listen, this is on Zero Hedge if you want to go back and read the article. There's a new report that shows that NATO is ready to send 100,000 troops to Ukraine if necessary. Now Boris Johnson, again, an ex-former UK leader, just kind of like our regimes here, stating that he believes that boots on the ground should be in Ukraine. He believes NATO should be there. Even the leaders of France and a lot of other countries, especially Western European countries, are all stating they want to see troops on the ground. Now, here's the thing. The reason they say that is because they believe America's got their back. And we're supposed to. If I was Trump, now this is just me speaking, just some lowly farmer from Mississippi. If I was Trump, I'd come out and say, if NATO pursues any escalation, we pull out. Now, this is kind of like the tariff thing. Does that mean we're actually going to pull out? No, but the threat of it should scare the bejesus out of NATO. Because NATO knows without America, NATO has no power. So if I was Trump, I'd say, look, I'm meeting with all these world leaders. I'm doing business already from Florida. You escalate this war, we pull out. NATO will not be part of America, and America will not be part of NATO. Now, there's still 50 to 60 days before he actually takes leadership. But do you believe that would scare them enough where they'd say, okay, we may not want to send that 100,000 troops. 100,000 troops. Because they know Ukraine is not strong enough to stand against Russia, and they know they should negotiate this. But they don't want to because it goes against the narrative of this world push. There's already a push to do the same thing that they did back in 2014, that Biden and Obama did back in 2014 to Ukraine. There's a report showing they want to do that to Belarus. So it's not going to stop until we get better leadership, not only in America, but also the UK. But you know, Trump could solve that because all he's got to do is say, we're pulling out of NATO. It's not the fact that we want to be bullies of NATO. It's the fact that we want pure representation of the people that it's supposed to represent. If we wanted war, then overwhelmingly most people would support that. Guess what? That's not what the overwhelmingly majority of America and the UK say. Most people do not want this to happen, do not want boots on the ground, do not want ships moving, do not want troops activated, all the while their leaders are pushing that. Now, why haven't they learned anything? You know, Starmer is a straight up liberal in the UK and in Europe. He is now having to pedal a little bit on his reform situations because of the amount of people that's overflooded his border. He's also having to backpedal a little bit on all his climate agendas. He's also having to backpedal on what he's said about all this liberal movement, because even in the woke ideology, even in Europe, how things are a lot more woke than they are here, people are starting to wake up to say this is absolutely stupid. We cannot afford these agendas. We cannot keep sending our people to go to foreign wars. We cannot keep this up anymore. So now he's starting to feel pushback. I would love to see them topple him. I'd love to see his government struggle just like we see in France and Germany and actually get better leadership. Because what we're needing is people like Malay, like El Salvador, like America with Trump. We need people like that leading the world so that way we have more peace. Now, what to do with Russia and Ukraine? You sit down at the table with them. You find out what can be negotiated and get it negotiated. Now, this is like a quid pro quo. This shows that Zelensky and Ukraine have no leg to stand on. They come out this week and say, well, guess what? We would stop the hot war if you just put us in NATO. So now they're trying to actually abuse NATO after all the $200-something billion that America has given them and all these other countries have given them. Now they're saying, oh, well, we could have avoided all this. Just put us in NATO. So they're almost using it as a quid pro quo. Hey, we'll quit using your stuff. You can quit giving us billions if you just put us in the alliance that is going to cause us to be really in a war with Russia, because Russia already said do not put NATO in Ukraine. This is why this war should have never happened. And this shows what weak leadership will do is put us in an escalated war. Now we're 55, 54, 53, however many days away from Trump becoming president. We see the European leaderships collapsing and the people are wanting new leadership. And again, now there's a new report that NATO wants to send 100,000 troops to Ukraine. it shows that, again, the representation is not there. Now, the tide is turning, and we love that. But the bottom line is we still have 55 days before Trump becomes president. Now, you saw Canadian Prime Minister at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Trump has already had a talk with Mexico, and of course he has some great relationships built with South America. So if he can build this alliance to say, you know what, we're not going to formulate a NATO to keep on going into expanding into these areas that they shouldn't, we're just wanting peace. If he has enough people that's willing to stand with him, then it doesn't matter anymore. It's over. Control, Alt, Delete. Start this thing over. Reset. That's what we need. Let's go back to what Putin said. Putin said because of what's happening, Trump's not safe anymore. Now, this is why Trump, I think, actually needs to stay in Mar-a-Lago. This is why I think that he doesn't need to just go to Washington and just live up there because of the dangers of, really what happens in Washington, the swamp. Doge came out this week and said they are wanting to decentralize the whole federal government. That is not a bad thing. It would give states more power. It would allow the federal government to do their job in defense and protect, but not any more than that. This overregulation that the swamp has become and this lobbying, chasm up there that it's become is going to keep causing us more and more problems in America if we don't get rid of it. So I actually think that it's awesome that Trump is making policy, doing things, and not even having to be in Washington. He's making people come to him. Canadian Prime Minister just flew to Florida to visit Trump. That is huge, especially when he's not even president yet. This man is a strong leader. And if we want to see real change, we have to get his cabinet appointment. We have to make sure that he is doing good policy and putting the right people around him, but also stay safe. Now, is Putin a good guy? That's for you to judge. Is Zelensky a good or bad guy? That's for you to judge. But the bottom line is when intelligence services from overseas are telling Trump that he's not safe, sometimes I wonder if he's not safe from his own people, or is he not safe from all the world problems that's going on? It may be a mixed bag, but the bottom line is if I was Trump, I'd make sure that I only put the right people around me, and I kept doing policy, and I kept doing meetings in my own home, because I could control the in and outs versus going somewhere across the seas or either going up to Washington. I think this is a game changer, and it sets a new policy. And I think what makes this even better is that if I was Trump, even when I was inaugurated, I'd do a lot of my business in Florida. A state that likes me, a place that I own, a place that I can get protected. It's a huge estate. It's actually bigger than the Washington, D.C. home. That would actually set a precedent to say, you know what, let's decentralize Washington by taking the president out of it and saying it's no point in being there anymore. Because that's how much we want to change D.C. The swamp. We want to get away from the swamp. You start putting congressmen back at their states. You start putting senators back in their states where they have to have their offices in the capitals of the states, in their home districts, versus actually in Washington. I promise you they would actually be more in tune with what their people have to say because they're right next door to them. They're shopping in their local grocery stores next to them. They're shopping in their local clothing stores next to them. And guess what? That means they get held more accountable. This could be the answer. Kind of like the gold standard thing we talked about yesterday. You want to change the world? You want to change America? You want to see a seat on a hill again? You start doing things that no one else did. You start putting leadership back at their homes. You start putting leadership back in their districts. You start governing from not the swamp, away from all these lobbyists and all these firms. And guess what? When you get away from the bureaucracy, you can actually see clearly. And I think we're going to set precedents and we can be protected. When world governments don't like me and everybody's telling me that my life is in danger, that means I'm going to be in a safer place. That's like me. I can go to a lot of places and visit a lot of places and vacation a lot of places, but I don't feel safe unless I'm back at my home with all the things that I've prepped to have and sustainable living that I do. That's just common knowledge. We want comfortability, and comfortability is back at our homes where we feel safer. I think Trump is actually setting a good precedent to say, hey, you know what? I'm not visiting any of you. You come here, and then we'll sit down, we'll have a meeting, and we'll set policy and precedent from right here in Florida. And I think that's a game changer. Now, last thing I want to mention, we've been focused kind of on Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. While Trump is going to get inaugurated, America has already activated 3 U.S. aircrafts to go to the Asian Pacific. So while we're trying to de-escalate some situations, we're still seeing escalation by our own military. And they're activating troops and activating aircraft carriers to another part of the world. Now, that's not counting the ships that's already started making their way over that way. It's not counting the ships that's in the Middle East. It's not counting the proxies that we have all across Europe. We're literally, while he is being inaugurated, there will be ships on its way to Asia. Now, if I was Trump, I'd say two things. Like I said before, the first one would be, NATO, you escalate anymore, we're pulling out. When I become inaugurated, first thing I sign, of course, the border and all this stuff with executive actions, but it would be, I'm pulling away from NATO. Now, the threat would do damage already to NATO, and also it would probably make them quit escalating. Secondly, I'd come in and say, China, look, hey, we can not like each other, or we can be friends, whatever, we can do business, and you do business there, we do business here. We try to keep at peace, and we'll be good trade partners. We're going to leave you alone, you leave us alone. Don't try to do anything with us in cyber-wise. We're not going to try to do anything with you when it comes to our carriers. Let's try to stay at peace. And therefore, I'm calling my ships back in a sign of peace. He should do that. I mean, they should just do a complete U-turn and turn all the way around. Trump could change a lot, but it's going to take people supporting him. It's going to take leaders, I say leaders very loosely. It's going to take congressmen and Senate and some of this bureaucratic class who has been so infiltrated in Washington swamps. They're going to have to change. And it's going to take people like the Doge Committee, like Vivek and Elon being stronger than ever to stand against it. All these reports against Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and all this in the cabinet, they're going to keep on feeling the heat. The question is, they need to stay in. And they need to work hard to get the initiatives that Trump wants passed. If we want peace in the world, we've got to do something different than what Biden and Harris has done. We've got to do something different than what even the Bush and Obama eras have done. All they wanted was unsettlement, fear, and no peace. Well, what Trump is saying is it's time for peace. And you're starting to see it with other governments because they're starting to collapse because the people are sick and tired of war. NATO even made mention that Ukraine has no leg to stand on without my 100,000 troops. So if Trump makes that one call and says, look, we're out of NATO, we're not backing you anymore, that would stop the 100,000 troops. That'd stop all the Boris Johnson and all of them saying that we need boots on the ground. And that would actually start changing the world to where you can have negotiations. Forget Zelensky saying he's going to quit like a quid pro quo if he joins NATO. NATO will be worth nothing if America's not in it. These are the policies that we need to enact, and Trump needs to be the one to do it. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this. I mean, are you happy that we have warnings of 100,000 troops going into Ukraine? Do you believe that your troops are not going to be part of that? Come on, think about that now. Also, why Trump being inaugurated, that we're sending more warships, more aircraft carriers to the Asian Pacific? You think that's just because they want to play hopscotch and play battleships board game? No, it's because they're trying to threaten what's going on over there. It's like when one thing stops, we got to start something else because our contractors and our lobbyists like that. Let's stop all that and let's bring peace. Trump should be first things, call NATO and say either de-escalate or we're out. Secondly, turn those ships around in a sign of good peace and that we want a peaceful world in the coming 4 years and we want a strong economy and we want the world to succeed. There's a lot of good things happening. But then there's a lot of corrupted bureaucrats and governments that are still in the way. It's time to stand up, back them, wake up, and understand what's going on. And I hope that Trump is ready for the fight of his life. But he needs to be safe too. Guys, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on these stories. And I want to hear from you. Your commenting helps me and helps others getting communication and start thinking differently because we may gain wisdom by something you're saying. So comment below, tell us what your thoughts are. God bless.